Namashwaya to everyone. Um, I feel a little pressured because I just heard from multiple people, many of you, that today's topic is something very important for each one of you, or all of you. I mean, many of you could relate to this topic. So I was actually wondering, you know, am I going to do justice to the question? But this is a very broad topic, so to say, and we can address this very particular topic in so many different ways. So I'll just try to share a few points from my point of view, or based on my experience, how I have handled it in my life, because all of us face this very issue. And then of course we're going to have the breakout room so you can discuss further on the topic from each of your experience, from your personal life. So the question which is given to me, it says how to judge multiple responsibilities without getting overwhelmed, especially now the AYUDH summit coming up. Many of you have few responsibilities that you have taken up. So when we have so many things to do, life as such is like that. It throws so many surprises, throws so many things at us, and we sometimes find it so difficult to juggle between all these things. So I think the very first point that I feel about life, again based on my experience, based on all the things that I have done in the past, some of them wisely, many of them otherwise, I feel the very first point probably we should reflect on is we have complicated our life unnecessarily. Perhaps life is not as complicated as we have made it. So, complicating our life that we do in so many different ways is something we really need to revisit and think about. Am I complicating my life unnecessarily? If so, how? And how can I get out of that vicious cycle? It's like the question that was, they say, was asked once to NASA, but I'm not very sure it was really asked. But of course, it's a valid question to put forth even otherwise. Uh, you know, it seems millions of dollars were spent in finding a pen that would work in space, because here pens work basically because of gravity, right? The ink gets pulled down, you hold the pen, and the ink naturally flows down, and then you can write on a piece of paper or whatever else that you're writing on. But in space, it's complete vacuum, plus there's no gravity. So how would the ink actually flow down? It's a big problem to actually solve, and it seems there was millions of dollars were spent so as to address this issue, and finally they came up with a pen that would work in vacuum and in zero gravity. But the question I've read was asked to NASA, which I'm really not sure if anyone did, but it's a valid question. If it is so complicated, if it's so difficult to use a pen in space, why spend millions of dollars? Why can't you just use a pencil? As simple as that. Why complicate the whole process? So probably it's a valid question to reflect on. Why complicate life so much? We'll get to that question again a little later, but it makes a lot of sense. Why complicate life so much? Why bring in so many different variables into the equation, and then we find it so difficult to solve that equation? That's typically how life is. So we have so many things that we juggle between. So these are the points I have thought about in this, especially from this, addressing this particular question about complicated life, so many different things to do that we juggle with. Um, so the very first point is try to understand life is not as complicated. Just our point of view makes life so complicated. So very first point, or the point addressing specifically the question is, or let's call it the second point, is we have so many challenges and problems to face in life. And when we have challenges and problem to face in life, the very first point is face them. probably one of the main problems we have is we try to not face the problem. Probably because it's very complicated, it's problemsome. It may not be actually complicated, we make it complicated, or we may make it seem complicated, and we think, let me deal with it later. Or sometimes we think it's too trivial, too insignificant, too simple a problem to address now, let me take care of it later. So the very second point is actually face the problem. Don't try to escape it, or don't try to underestimate it. Either one of them. Face the problem. Face the problem, try to get over the problem. Because we don't face it now, we have to face it later. So better face it now. That brings us to the third point, which is let's try not to procrastinate. Most of the time, it's not that we have too many things to do. We come to a state wherein we have too many things to do because we did not address them when they were to be addressed. We accumulate them knowingly or unknowingly, and then we get to a state wherein we have too many things to do. Now we get stressed. So avoid getting to that situation. And one of the main problems is procrastination. And when we say procrastination, like I mentioned a little while ago, we procrastinate, one, probably because it is too complicated a problem, too severe an issue to address. Let me not address it now. Or the other thing would be it is too simple a problem to address. And that's why I don't want to address it now. So both the cases, let's try to understand them, identify them, and better face that problem right then and there. So the third point is don't procrastinate. And one universal rule, I feel, the thumb rule, is whether the problem is simple or whether the problem is complicated, if we don't address it earlier than later, the problem will become complicated. Whether we like it or not, however simple it is or however complicated it is going to become even more complicated. So better to face it earlier than to face it when it gets more complicated. And that's the universal rule. It will become complicated because as time passes, more variables will automatically kick in. So it will become complicated. So address them as early as possible. So first point was understand life is not as complicated. We make it complicated. 2, face the problems then and there as quickly as possible. Third one, which leads it to the third point, let's not procrastinate. Procrastination will only make things complicated for us. The earlier we do it, much simpler it would be. The third thing I feel is every little thing or every big thing that we try to do, we have so many things to handle. Probably we get to that state wherein we have so many things to handle and it becomes difficult for us, is mainly because we are not actually addressing the core problem, the actual problem. Most of the time we are busy taking care of the peripheral problems, or the sub problems, and we are so busy taking care of them that we get tired, we get worn out taking care of them because they'll be multiple in numbers. Rather than addressing multiple problems, let's try to address the single problem, which is the core problem, which is more or less the root of all the other problems that we have. So I remember in computer science or in engineering, during undergrad I was taught never lose sight of the forest for the tree. Is that right? Am I? It's applicable in every field. I feel in medical field, in psychology, in every little field that we could think of. In business school too. Never lose sight of the forest for the tree, because when we are trying to address the tree, always have the bigger picture. Always never get lost in the peripheral issue. Rather try to understand the actual problem that we need to solve. It's like someone sent me this particular joke. I really did not find it funny. Maybe you will find it funny. I really didn't know why they called it a joke, but I definitely found it as a profound point to reflect on, given this particular point that we are discussing. So I'll just read it out, what was sent to me. It goes as: a man was walking down the street when he saw a sign that said, "Talking dog for sale." He was curious, so he went inside and asked the owner about the dog. "What makes this dog so special?" he asked. "Well," the owner said, "the dog can see the big picture." The man was intrigued. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Well," the owner said, "for example, if you were to ask this dog what the meaning of life is, he would tell you that it is to experience all that life has to offer and to make the most of every moment." So the dog is very spiritual, actually very practical, much better than human beings then. And then it goes on. Man was impressed. "That's amazing," he said. "I'll take him." He paid the owner and took the dog home. And as soon as they got home, the man asked the dog, "So what is the meaning of life?" And the dog immediately started wagging its tail, sticking its tongue out. It said, "Food, food, food." So that's the joke. I did not find it particularly very funny, but I found it very profound. I think we have a lot to learn from this dog. Rather than we were discussing about how we make life complicated, in this case, the dog teaches us that very moment what we need to do, just do that. And that very moment, all the dog needs is all that the life has to offer you, it accepts it happily. Whatever you give the dog, it'll either play with it or it'll consume it as food. And it is happy with that. For dog, life is that. And it's something profound for us to reflect on. Probably we should learn from the dogs. They live that very moment. They have I remember we were in Florida a few months ago, and we were in this house with a couple of dogs, so cute, and like they're literally babies. And then we were going out, and they are so attached to the owners. They also started walking out with us, but then they were not supposed to come with us, so they locked them up in a particular room, and we left. And they were making all those whining noise, that you can't. It's so difficult to ignore those whining noise that the dogs make. But then we had to ignore. We left. We came back after an hour. Now, typically, human beings would be quite upset that you ignored all my calls and you just disrespected me. But the moment the room of that door was open after we came back, the dogs just completely forgot about that. They were so happy, and they were just celebrating that very moment that everyone is back. Now let's enjoy life. So that's something we need to learn from this particular joke, so-called joke, and the incident from Florida that I shared. Live that very moment. What is the actual problem? Just solve that. Let's not get carried away with the peripheral things that we usually get hung up with, and then we never get to the actual core problem. And side note, we were just talking about the pen in space, right? And the problem is very simple. If we can use pencil, why don't we use pencil was the question we posted, right? We posed. The actual answer is, when we use pencil in space has zero gravity. By chance, the tip of the pencil breaks, or when we write, the pencil creates dust of the lead that the black part of the pencil is made of, and that dust starts flying in the air. Or if in case the tip of the pencil breaks, that also starts floating in air, and it can get into your ears, it can get into your eyes, probably while you're sleeping. It can get into any corner of the spaceship or the space station that you are in, and it can actually lead to a lot of problems. And it's not one little pencil that you write so constantly that many of them will be floating up in the air, and that's going to be a big problem. It can lead to big issues. That's why they actually spend so many $1 million in devising a pen that would work in space. So if you're really looking at it, basically the scientists actually got to the root problem and resolved it, rather than thinking, oh, why spend so much money? Let's just use pencil. But pencil will lead to bigger problems. So they really try to understand what the root problem is and try to address it, though they had to put in a lot of effort and money into it. So that's the fourth point, right? once again, the first point was life is not really complicated. We make it complicated. Two, when we have problems, just face them. Just don't let go of it. Don't try to escape it. Just face them. Third one that leads to don't procrastinate. And fourth, because we procrastinate, we're only complicating things. And fourth, get to the actual problem. Don't try to juggle with the peripheral issues that we have. So that's the fourth point. The fifth point, how many of our problems, big or small, we may have multiple problems to face and juggle with. However big or small they are, the very nature of human beings or devices that we have is to process only one problem at a time. In computer science, we call it, we taught about this concept called mutual exclusion. Computer science students, I hope they teach it even now. Mutual exclusion, you have the computer screen, you have the speakers, you have the memory, RAM, you have so many, you have the printer, you have so many different peripherals and components inside the computer. And every program would try to access it. But it's not just possible for everyone to access it. We call it parallel processing, or multiple programs that can run on a computer. As a matter of fact, there's nothing called parallel processing. It is only one process at a time. Just that the switching happens so quickly that it feels like so many processes are running on the computer. So there is nothing called, or it's literally impractical that we are handling too many things. We are capable of handling only one thing at a time, and that's what we should do. When we try to go against this principle of life or this principle of nature, that will lead us to problem again. And it's not just computer science. I read an article on Huffington Post, one of the dailies, right? It was about an article from Mayo Clinic. So it's a reputed medical center. And they were talking about how the brain is capable of consciously handling only one thought at any given time. The brain is capable of handling only one thought at any given point of time. And they were mentioning how the mind toggles between these thoughts so quickly that it feels like we are handling so many different thoughts. And they say each time there is a switch between one thought to the another, it consumes energy. And more toggling that we do, it saps us out of energy. So it is best to take care of one problem at a time. The more and more we try to handle, we are actually not handling them. We are capable of handling only one problem. And more we try to handle them, we are forcing our mind or brain to switch between these thoughts or these problems. And that is only going to make us even more tired. So probably the very core of the question that we are discussing today is, we are capable of handling only one thing at a time. Why not just go with it? Why try to go against the natural instinct or the natural principle that we have? Handle one thing at a time. We may have a big problem. If we have a big problem, the best thing is to break that problem into smaller problems, address one problem at a time, and let the other thing that we have come after that. We ourselves start, doing a computer program within us. Let's handle one thing at a time. Today, I had 4 or 5 things to do today. The moment I woke up, these 4 thoughts, the 4 important things to do, they're kind of time sensitive. And I was like, oh, what should I do? Maybe I should just skip showering today because that'll save me time. And, showering is going to take only about 10 minutes maximum. That's not really going to take anything, it's not going to really create a problem with those 4 problems. 4 things that I had to address today. Only because I'm so obsessed with those 4 problems, even the little basic things that I do, my mind start questioning whether I should do it. Just do it. And, address one problem. Then my mind was like, I should do this. And while I was taking care of the first thing, the second thing started getting pumped into my brain, and I was like, I should probably stop this and do that. And I would get nowhere. So I was, today especially, I was very firm, and good that we are discussing this topic, that I should do only one thing at a time. I got done with the first thing, then I switched to the second thing. I got done with that thing. The third thing was someone waiting for me to meet me to do some seva outside in the yard. And I just asked him, can you just wait for 10 more minutes? I need to get this done. It was getting delayed. He waited for 10 minutes. I got done with it, then went there, got done with that. And the fourth thing that I had to do, I came back and did that. So, not that I handled it perfectly, but I feel even if at least we can think, or we can remind ourselves of the fact that we can handle only one thing at a time, that will take us a long way. It will help us. Do only one thing at a time, just get done with it, and then go to the next. Doesn't mean you ignore the other things. If you think they are all time sensitive, do a little part and then go to the other one, do a little part in that, come back to this, but even do that in a planned way. So that is the fifth point. I hope it makes sense. Make sense? Okay, makes sense. And finally, the sixth point, or the one but the last point, the sixth point is our attitude. Like the very first point that we discussed, we complicate life unnecessarily. So our attitude plays a very important role in how we can deal with these issues, however big or small they are, or however many numbers that they are in. What is most important is our attitude. If we don't change our attitude, the problems will never get resolved. It will only start building up, and more problems come, or more things have to be addressed. It's like the example of, most of you probably know this. It's about three friends going to a restaurant or a cafe, and they have coffee, probably get some snacks. Finally, the bill, the amount that it comes up to, the check they get, is for $25. So each one of them puts in $10 each. So it is $30. The waiter comes back, gives them $5, and they tip him $2. So $3 left, right? $25, $5 come back, they tip him $2, $3 left. So they all take $1 each back. So everything is fine. Everything looks fine. Now they try to take stock. They say, we paid $10, we got $1 back. So effectively we have paid $9 each. That makes it 27. $2 went to the waiter as tip. That makes it 29. Where is the $30th? The $30th is missing now. Each one of them paid $9. That makes it $27. $2 to the waiter. That makes it $29. Where is the $30th? Where is the $30th? Anyone? Kaiwa, you should tell me. You're a mathematician.
My first instinct is tax.
Tax.
No, it's not.
You're not thinking like a mathematician. You're thinking like a business school or economics person. I mean, a mathematician would typically say, you think about it, I rephrase the problem, but I rephrase the problem in a wrong way. Actually, the $1 is not missing. I kind of skewed the question now, or I skewed the problem in such a way that it sounds like $9 plus $2. That is not how it is. It is $25 plus $2 and $1 that they got back. That is how it was. That sums up to 20. It is just a wrong way of posing the problem, wherein you say each one of them paid $9. They did not pay $9. They paid $10. They paid $10 and $2 that went to the waiter, and $3 that came back, and they got it back. That's how the problem is. But as long as we keep looking at from this way, as I keep repeating, telling they paid $27, $2 to the waiter, where is the $1? It'll always be a problem. It'll never get solved. It is just a wrong way of looking at it. Mathematically looking at it, the way I expressed or I explained the situation is wrong. But as long as I keep doing that, it is going to be a problem. None of us are going to find that $1 is always going to be missing. So, like I mentioned, our attitude is most important. Unless and until we get out of that thinking cycle, the way I posed it, rather come to the actual problem, which is $30 minus $3 minus $2, $25. That is the actual problem here, which is fine. Mathematically, it falls in place. So unless and until we change our attitude, it is always going to remain a problem, and we'll always keep searching for that $1. So our attitude is very important. That's the sixth point. And the seventh point, I'm not going to elaborate it on it too much. Swamiji mentioned about it the last week during Bhagavad Gita. When he was talking about Bhagavad Gita, always remember, whatever we are trying to do, how many other things that we are trying to take care of, there is always a higher force. It's not that I can take care of everything myself. There are always things that are beyond our control. Always be prepared for that. When we are prepared for it, our attitude towards taking care of all these things will be much different. For example, say we are driving a car, say it's a rickety car, which when you apply the brake will not stop the way usually cars do. When you steer it right, it will only inch a little towards the right. It's a problemsome car to drive, and someone asks you to drive, you'll definitely find it very difficult to drive. But when the owner tells you this is exactly the problem, when you apply the brake, it is not going to stop soon. So start applying early enough. When you have to turn the wheel a lot so that it turns. You are prepared for it, then car is not going to be that big a problem as it would have been otherwise. Chances of you getting into an accident is going to be low because you are prepared for it. Similarly, there are so many factors in life that are beyond our control. We better be prepared for it. That things may not actually go the way I want it to go, the way I planned, the way I thought I will handle 3 or 4 things that I have to handle today. Definitely be aware of that it is going to be beyond my control at certain point of time. The more we are prepared for it, better we will be able to handle it. So once again, quickly, the 7 points. The very first point, life is not as complicated. Let us not make it complicated. 2, let us face the problems. The more we keep the problems to be faced later, it's a problem for us, which is tied to the third point, procrastination. Let us not procrastinate. The more we procrastinate, however small or big the issue is, it will become complicated. And then that was the fourth one. The fifth one is, let us actually get to the core of the problem and try to address the core problem rather than juggling between the peripheral problems. That's usually the situation we are in. That's why we say we have so many things to take care of. It's basically all these offshoots. And then the sixth one, let us be aware that we are designed to only address one problem at a time. The brain is designed that way. All the gadgets are designed that way. They can take care of one problem at a time. We can switch between them quickly, but be aware we can address only one problem at a time, and let us give only as much load to ourselves to address one problem at a time and quickly switch between several. And then the sixth one, attitude. Our attitude is very important. Seventh one, always be ready. Accept that things are not under our control. There is a higher force, or however you would want to pose. Be prepared for it. Acceptance and be prepared for it. So these are the points I wanted to share. I hope how do you figure out what the core problem is what Ritu is asking. Maybe you can discuss in the breakout session. I don't want to take the discussion for too long, but we'll definitely address that. Maybe that's one question all of you can discuss. Maybe that's a good question to discuss. How to figure out what the core problem is. Can all of you do that in your breakout rooms too? Maybe one of the things that you could discuss is that. Okay, so I'll see you after the breakout session now. Namah Shivaya.
Shivaya. Thank you, Ramanji. Right before the breakout session, we'll do announcements. I think we wanted to talk about upcoming.
And Kaiva, you want to stop the recording?